Trading card games have been around for a long time. From baseball cards to Magic the Gathering to Pokemon to Yu-Gi-Oh! And now that phenomenon has arrived in Wuthering Waves in the event all out towards the peaks of prestige. No, I've never really been one for TCGs. I do have a memory of my mom buying me and my brother the Yugi and Kaiba starter decks from, I don't know, 20 years ago. And even then, we didn't know the actual rules of the game because we were dumb little kids who didn't want to read a book on how to play the game. Instead, we went off of what we knew from the anime, from when it aired on Saturday morning PBS Kids. Even so, being the little kids we were, we quickly lost interest and ventured off to newer pastures. Anyway, as I was saying, trading card games were never really my thing, but the new event rewards include some more asteroids and a new set of wings, so I begrudgingly loaded the event, telling myself that I would just listen to some video essays on the side and do the bare minimum to get the rewards. The event begins in Septimon, where some random NPC named Ludens singles me out to be the perfect player based on Rover's outfit alone, which is odd. After spouting the old Pokemon adage of eye contact equals battle, the tutorial begins. The rules are pretty simple. You have a deck, the deck has 20 cards, and you draw 4 cards at the beginning of each round, and you have 2 energy or action points, which is used whenever you use a character skill or when you deploy an echo from your hand onto the field. You can get more energy by reconstructing a card or through the use of some echo skills. There are 3 kinds of cards. There's your 1 cost, your 3 cost, and your core echoes. 1 cost echoes can be deployed directly from your hand onto the field with almost no restrictions. You can stack a second 1 cost echo onto an already deployed 1 cost echo, which is called modulation. 3 cost echoes can only be deployed onto a modulated 1 cost echo. A bit pricey, but worth it. Core echoes, which are your overruled 4 cost boss echoes, can only be deployed after fulfilling one of 2 conditions. Either reach round 5 or complete their unique trial. Your core echo is basically your win button so long as your opponent does not have their own core echo on the field. Some echoes have a transform skill, which is basically your supports. They can either buff your team, debuff the opponent, give you more energy, or Pot of Greed. Once you're done setting up your field, the echoes will fight real time in an arena, and the winning team deals damage to the loser's life points. After thoroughly trashing Ludens in the tutorial, we're approached by a man named Furious, who is most definitely not the creator of Peaks of Prestige. Furious tells me that I can become the first ever Apex Hunter.
Yeah, you earned this,
Apex Duelist, which is essentially the Pokemon champion. It's simple enough: beat the 6 Lords of Prestige, obtain the Medals of Prestige, and that's it. And since becoming the Apex Duelist is the only way for me to get my fancy wings, an Apex Duelist I shall become. I walk through the city to make my way to the first Lord of Prestige, Agrippa, an old blacksmith who is procrastinating by playing cards instead of working. So, being me, I indulge him in his procrastination by playing a game of Prestige, to which he loses pretty badly because I sent a bear after him and he decides to go back to work. It's also around this time that I decide to give myself a title. If I am going to become champion, or when I become champion, I might as well have a title to go along with it. Out of the 4 given, I decided to choose the Almighty because it is just a fact. Once that was done, Agrippa pointed me to the next Lord of Prestige, Liliana. She had a couple of fans cheering her on and quickly told me that only the strong have the honor of facing her in a card game. So, to prove my strength, I quickly beat her only 2 fans right in front of her, giving her a nice dose of demoralization. She tries to win through the power of friendship or the power of her fans cheering her on, but no amount of cheering will let her win against an angry bear. After losing, she begins to cry, so I do the only thing when affronted by a crying girl. The third lord is a medic named Marcia in a tower doing medical stuff to gladiators. Apparently, there was a small-scale task or Discord hunt, and she's taking care of the wounded. And the injured don't want to take Marcia's medicine that tastes pretty bad, so they made an agreement. If they play a game of Prestige and lose, they drink the medicine. And because Marcia said that she would not play a game of Prestige with me until all the people drank the medicine, I decided to speedrun that process. I quickly beat up the 2 injured, make them drink their potion, go back to Marcia, and finally get my match. And for the first time, I actually had a bit of trouble. Not only did she use my strategy of throwing bears at a problem, she also used a Lumiscale construct, which by itself is a pretty good card. Fortunately, in doing so, she pushed my life points below 15 and activated my trap card, Inferno Rider. Not really, because it was already round 5. And even with 2 bears and 2 Lumiscale constructs at her side, Ghost Rider easily took them out, earning me my 3rd medal. The 4th Lord of Prestige, Rawl, was found muttering something about being short 880,000. Upon being asked, Rawl reveals that he is severely overworked and that his next break from work will be in 4 years. And since I do not want to wait 4 years to get my wings, I decided to go talk to his managers about this grave injustice. Turns out the reason why he's so overworked is because of his 3 coworkers. One was offloading his work onto Rawl, so I beat him up. The family head was the typical back in my day and was just an ass, so he also got the boot. And the third was a hypocritical slacker trying to find people slacking off so that he can be a snitch and get a bonus. Justice being served, I went back to Rawl and told him that I won him a little break, and he decides to unwind by losing to me in a game of cards. Well, I say that, but damn if it wasn't close. I was testing out a new deck, and by the time it was round 5, Rawl had already summoned his core echo while only losing 8 life points. On the other hand, I did not have my core echo out and had 1 life point remaining. However, I had not lost just yet. If I play slowly and carefully, I'll win. But that's how losers think. I threw caution to the wind and went all in. I got my Bell Gargoyle onto the field, tribute summoned a Rune Bear, and sacrificed the rest of my hand to give a Swords Dance buff to my entire team. Now that my Gargoyle was buffed by swords, he cast Gun to wipe out Rawl's team, and with my entire team still alive, took out the rest of Rawl's life points in a single round. Rawl was a pretty good sport about losing and tells me that he was saving up 1 million shell credits to buy his way out of his current occupation. A noble goal, but at his current rate, it would take him over 33 years to get enough credits. Anyway, none of that is my concern, and after getting the location of the next Lord of Prestige, I went on my merry way. Or at least I would have if it wasn't 3:35 in the morning and I was tired. A little over 12 hours later and finishing up my dailies, I arrived in town to figure out who the next Lord of Prestige was. Being something of an agent of inquiry myself, I talked to an angry woman who was grieving about her lost companions. I tried to offer my condolences, but then she chose to take her anger out on me. So I taught her a quick lesson in both proper etiquette and anger management. It turns out her lost companions were just her echoes in her decks of Prestige, Peaks of Prestige deck. She was also very salty about losing to 78 different people. I quickly flew away to avoid the wrath of an angry woman, and talked to an old man who was doing his best impression of Trainer Red. Unfortunately for him and fortunately for me, he was nowhere near the level of Trainer Red, and I won without taking a single point of life point damage. The third person I talked to was touching grass and was looking for his wife, so I figured that he of all people must have his head on straight, and upon seeing that I was a Peaks of Prestige player, wanted to duel. I thought he would be more worried about his missing wife, and upon inquiring, he said, and I quote, "Forget it." No wonder his wife left. I quickly won, but he didn't seem all that bothered about losing and went back to looking for his wife, who turned out to be a failing Brangle card. Oh my god, dude. Okay, look. Now, normally I would say that I shouldn't judge because Sanhua, Shangli, Cantarella, and Zane exist, but a giant monkey? Like, their bedroom activity must be... Leaving the weird man behind, I find a kid doing his best impression of Piccolo. He tells me that he is the Lord of Prestige but refuses to play because he believes that the game has brainwashed everybody in the town. I explained to him what an addiction is and that his uncle's wife is a giant monkey, which throws him into shock. Even though the kid was in shock, he managed to take out half my life points before losing, and I finally got my 5th medal. Having lost, the kid goes even further into shock, asking himself something about what losing feels like. I wouldn't know, kid. I never lost. While lording my undefeated streak over the Lord of Prestige, Furious calls me and says that he has some information about my final challenge. Being so close to getting myself a new pair of wings, I make haste and fly throughout the night, going from the docks all the way to the city, arriving at dawn, and talking to Furious. He tells me that I was the first person to earn all 5 medals of prestige and that I finally qualified to challenge the last lord, the Conqueror of Prestige. The match is to take place in Colosseum Olimdos, but unfortunately, booking the venue is quite expensive and Furious only has the budget for 1 match. And then he proceeds to tell me that there were 3 other people who also got all 5 medals, which is odd because I just got my 5th medal like 5 minutes ago. Regardless, Furious tells me that I need to beat all of them to ensure that I am the most qualified of qualifiers, and with my wings and asteroids on the line, I oblige. The first of the 3 qualifiers was a man who was second guessing his deck while using me as a reference. Sadly for him, there can only be one me. Second of the 3 is a man who very boldly exclaims that a card game has no place for weaklings, and that losers should just quit. He loses to me shortly thereafter, and true to his word, he quits Peaks of Prestige. The last of the 3 qualifiers was the complete opposite of the arrogant duelist, saying that Peaks of Prestige is all about having fun. Unfortunately, I thrashed her so badly that I took the fun out of it. Anything for asteroids. I go back to Furious and tell him that the other 3 are no longer in the picture. He announces that my match against the Conqueror is going to be held the next morning at 10 and that he'll see me in the arena. Seeing how it was pretty late, I go to rest up at the nearby hotel only to run into Lupa. Lupa tells me that she's only here to see me and that she'll be cheering me on in tomorrow's match, which honestly is really sweet of her. She also says that she picked up the game and that perhaps one day we'll play a match against each other. After that, we part ways and I get a good rest for tomorrow's match. The next morning rolls around and I fly down to the arena to talk to Furious once more. He dramatically reveals that he is the 6th Lord of Prestige, the Conqueror, and the creator of the game. Like, yeah man, I kinda knew that already. You did a horrible job at keeping it hidden. Breaking the news to him left him flabbergasted, and in an attempt to get over his embarrassment, Furious walks over to the arena, where a host waits to introduce us to the crowd, and after all of that, the championship match begins. So, remember how early in the video I explained the rules of the game? specifically about the part where each round begins with the players only drawing 4 cards and that you only have 2 energy to use at the beginning of the round? Yeah, Furious does not follow his own rules. Every other lord followed the rules with the exception of Gallus, but he's a kid, so that can be excused. Even then, he only drew 2 extra cards at the beginning of his turn, and even I can draw 1 extra card thanks to Shangli Yao's character skill. Furious, on the other hand, starts the game with 8 cards. That is double the number of the standard hand. And apparently, he has an infinite amount of energy because he deploys 9 cards in a row. Now, I get it. There are some cards that do have a skill that will give you more energy, so let's break down what he does and see if what he did is a legal move. To start, he sets down 2 little monkeys, 2 wraiths, modulates a couple of Lotties and an arrow drake, transforms a wolf, and modulates another drake. Not one of those cards have a skill that give extra energy. But okay, I will give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he has a unique character passive that allows him to just have a busted turn 1. And despite my best efforts, I lose round 1 and take 8 points of damage. Round 2 begins and lo and behold, Furious cheats some more. He begins the round with only 4 cards this time, a Dearness Knight, a Galescurve Stalker, a Saber Boar, and 1 card that is not that important because he sent it to the graveyard immediately. This brings his energy to a total of 3. Then, he transforms his Dearness Knight, Galescurve Stalker, and Saber Boar. Is this a legal move? No. No, it is not. Dearness Knight has a deployment cost of 3, and this includes transformations. By transforming DK immediately, that would bring his energy down from 3 to 0. But even with 0 energy, Furious continues to transform his 2 other cards, which should have brought his energy down from 0 to -2, making that an illegal move.
Hold it!
My turn begins and I modulate a Vanguard Jinrock, allowing me to draw 2 cards from my deck. I reconstruct 1 Abyssal Patricius and 1 Lumiscale construct so that I can modulate a different construct onto LaGuardia. I then reconstruct my Spearback for energy, which lets me deploy my baby Vivid Blaze Saurian onto the field, and I end my turn. The fight was pretty dicey, but thankfully, my Vivid Blaze comes out on top, and Furious takes 2 points of life point damage. And so begins round 3, where Furious draws a Dearness Knight, a Chop Chop Leftless, a Huskamp Flinger, and an unknown card that he immediately reconstructs, once again bringing him back up to 3 energy. He cheats once again to transform his DK and Chop Chop, a total of 4 energy to his 3. With enough transformations, he fulfilled the requirements to bring his Fallacy of No Return onto the field. He then reconstructs one of his Lotties to bring his Huskamp Flinger onto the field and end his turn. God, I feel like TG's anime. He has some great videos, so if you like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or breakdowns, go check him out. It is now my turn and I once again modulate my Vanguard Jinrock, giving me 2 more cards. I reconstruct a Gulpuff and a Fusion Dreadmane, bringing me up to the 3 energy required to modulate my Spearback onto the field. I reconstruct my second Fusion Dreadmane to deploy a Fusion Warrior and end my turn. I lose the round, but my Echoes were just tough enough to wait out the clock, which continuously dealt damage to everybody's HP. At the end, the only survivor is Furious's Arrow Drake, and I only take 2 points of life point damage. Turn 4 begins and Furious begins by reconstructing an unknown card transforming a DK, reconstructing another card, and then ends his turn. I start my turn by modulating a LaGuardia onto my Fusion Warrior, which was the third flank force skill needed to bring my Sentry construct onto the field. I reconstruct a LaGuardia that was in my hand, modulate my Abyssal Patricius onto the field, reconstruct my Lumiscale construct, transform one of my Dwarf Cassowaries to increase the strength of all of my deployed echoes, and with no other action left, I end my turn. While my Sentry construct has less stats than Fierce's Fallacy, the rest of my echoes far outclass his, and I easily win the round, dealing a solid 35 points of damage, bringing Furious down to 13 life points. Round 5 begins and it is the penultimate round. Furious begins by reconstructing an unknown card, transforming a DK to increase the strength of his entire team by 2, and Fallacy strength by another 2 stages due to his passive, debuffs my Sentry by transforming a Chop Chop, and transforms a Saber Boar. With all of those transformations, his Fallacy is now sitting with 14 strength and 18 constitution, which is honestly pretty scary. My turn begins and I draw a Fusion Dreadmane, Fusion Warrior, a baby Bearded Blade Saurian, and a Gulpuff. Unable to do anything with this dead hand, I simply discard them all and end my turn. Predictably, I lose that round and take 9 points of damage, leaving me with 11 life points remaining. The final round, round 6, begins and I am on the verge of losing this match. Furious begins by reconstructing an unknown card and then transforming his DK as per usual. He then reconstructs his Large Loss to deploy a fresh Nimbus race, and then he ends his turn. It is now my turn, and just like round 5, I have another dead hand. I reconstruct my entire hand, and then end my turn. And this is where Furious made a fatal mistake. Had he just simply repeated his previous turn, or even transformed one more card to buff his Fallacy once more, I could have lost. The round ends with my win, but given the state of my team, a stronger and tankier Fallacy, plus the modulated Lottie that he threw away, could have tipped the scales throughout the round just enough for me to lose. However, at the end of the day, that is not what happened, and this is definitely one of those we take those moments. And with that, the almighty Rover defeats the conqueror of prestige, Furious, and we finally claim the title of the first ever Apex Duelist. Oh, and I got my wings.
I can see the dawn on water's face, with the shimmering light that starts to race.